The Big Show.
All right, you need to check this man out on social media at Greg Cosell. He is fantastic. His information comes from watching video or from talking with coaches, period. That's how it gets done. And Greg, we'll get to some of the wide receiver prospects a little bit later, but there are some vets in the news that I wanted to get your take on. I guess I'll start with Derek Carr to the New Orleans Saints. I think I'm a little bit surprised, Greg, that it doesn't sound like there was more interest in him, but he did get a nice contract, and I think he immediately becomes probably the best quarterback in that division. And, you know, as someone you would call a professional quarterback, I just don't really believe that the drop-off from 21 to last year is all on him.
No, I mean, and that's the best way to describe him. And, you know, keep a couple things in mind. They have some talent. You know, I guess we don't know about Michael Thomas, who spent the last number of years being injured, and maybe he's back, maybe he's not. But obviously, they have Chris Olave, who had a really good rookie season. Jarvis Landry, when healthy, is a very good receiver. They still have Alvin Kamara. They're not bad at the tight end position. They've got a solid O-line. This is not a bad offensive team if you look at their personnel. And I think Derek Carr probably considered that. We have no idea who was interested in him, who was not, what the numbers were. We just know that he signed there. But, you know, he's a very professional quarterback. Keep in mind, he played last year on a team whose defense was not very good at all, and that puts a lot of pressure on the quarterback. This is a team actually that has a good defense as well. The Saints defense under Dennis Allen. He's the head coach now, but obviously he still runs the defense. It's a very, very good defense. This is kind of a relatively complete team, Ross. This is not a bad football team by any stretch of the imagination. So it's actually a very good landing spot for Derek Carr.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think right now, well, I'll get into it a little bit later, but I think right now they're more or less the favorite now in the NFC South, although a lot is still unsettled about the quarterback position in that division. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. I mean, the Bucks, the Falcons, the Panthers, we'll see. I mean, none of them might have their starting quarterback right now, although I kind of think Ritter will start for the Falcons. I guess we'll have to see. What about, Greg, the Geno Smith story? I guess I got a lot of questions there. Number one is, can you think of anybody else that this has ever happened to, where the guy didn't play forever and then came out and played so well? How does this happen? You know, what did everybody else miss? Was it just opportunity? Just your thoughts on Geno Smith and what you saw from him last year, whether or not he can sustain that.
Yeah, and look, I think when Geno Smith came out, I remember that draft specifically, talking to a number of agents. That draft was in New York. I happened to have been there, and Geno Smith was thought to be a first-round pick, and obviously that did not happen. He went in the second round, I believe, pick 39, and obviously has, not had the career that he certainly hoped. Geno Smith always had very good throwing ability. Back then, there was 10 years ago, I guess it was, there was still a sense that if you came out of that style of offense, which was very air raid based, that the transition to the league would be very, very difficult. He started early in his career, was erratic, was inconsistent, up and down, but then did not get any more of an opportunity. What we don't know, Ross, is if he was continued to be given an opportunity early in his career, could this have happened, year 3, year 4, year 5? He's now a more mature quarterback. He's seen a lot. He's probably more refined, more advanced, just in a number of things that go along with the position. He could always throw the ball really well. I thought they did a really good job with him a year ago. This was a team that was heavy with multiple tight end personnel, 12 personnel, 13 personnel. That really helped them in the way they structured their offense and defined the reads for him. So it was a really good mix and marriage, and Geno played very well. I don't think there's any reason to believe that he will drop significantly. Numbers are numbers. Could the numbers not be exactly the same? Sure. They could be better too. You never know. But I would not expect a significant drop-off in Geno Smith's play.
A couple other guys I just wanted to ask you on quickly. I don't know how much LA Rams football you even got a chance to watch last year, Greg, because they weren't really in the mix
Right.
very much. They are they're giving Allen Robinson the ability to seek out a trade. This is a guy that had some really good years in Jacksonville, had a really good year in Chicago, and the Rams thought enough of him last offseason.
Yep.
Give him a really good contract. There's a perception out there that he's done, that he's washed, all those things. What did you see from him last year, if anything, and what has he been throughout his career?
Yeah, to be honest, I kind of stopped watching the Rams offense when Matthew Stafford went down because they were not really in the mix. I ended up seeing a lot more of their defense just because of who they were playing against, but I did not see a ton of their offense. I think when they signed Robinson, they thought he'd be a really important piece in an offense that, hey, they were coming off a Super Bowl year. He'd be an added piece. They had Cooper Kupp. They had Van Jefferson coming back. They'd be they have a good tight end in Higbee, that he could be a nice piece of their offense, in a sense, replacing Robert Woods, kind of that intermediate receiver, tough, physical, work the middle of the field. For whatever reason, it didn't quite work. Now, when receivers are not getting the ball, and he was not getting targeted, as you know, early in the season, it's hard for me to know if they've lost it or not lost it. He was not going to be a vertical dimension anyway, so it wasn't really a speed issue. But for whatever reason, he was not targeted very much early in the season, and I really don't know why that was the case.
What about down in Jacksonville?
Yeah.
Evan Ingram that was given the franchise tag. That's another one, Greg. It's like you always saw the ability, never quite put it together until last year. And you always wonder, like, could he have done that with the Giants? Is it coaching? Is it how they were using him? Did he just improve? Yeah. Was it a confidence thing? It's tough to kind of put your finger on it sometimes.
Yeah, and he's always had talent, Ross. You may recall when he came out, he ran, I believe, a 4.42 at the combine, had great straight line speed, a linear type receiver, found a niche in Jacksonville in a well-conceived passing game. With Doug Peterson, we know that tight ends are always a factor in the passing game, going back to Philly with what Zach Ertz did. So he put together his best year ever. Talent was never the issue. And obviously they tagged him. They want him there. And now with Calvin Ridley being reinstated, they've got a lot of quality receivers because Ridley is a very, very good receiver.
Well, I'm glad you brought up his name because he didn't play at all last year. So that was going to be my last veteran question before we get to these draft prospects is just, can you refresh our memory, Greg, on Calvin Ridley?
Yeah, Calvin Ridley is a really, really good route runner. I mean, he's one of those guys when you put on the tape, he knows how to use his vertical stem. He's really good at the top of his route stem. He's a separation generator. Just can get open, and he's not a true vertical dimension, but because of his route running ability, he can get over the top at times. But he's really just one of the better route runners. And we're speaking about Ridley at his best. That's all we can do is what the tape showed. We don't know what he'll be after a year off, but if he's the same Calvin Ridley, you're dealing with a guy that is really good. He understands how to attack off coverage corners. He understands how to get them to turn. He understands how to get them off their spot. He's really good at the top of his route stem. I mean, really, to be a great receiver, that's one of the things that's critically important. It's releases and it's what you do at the top of your route stem. And Ridley is very, very good at both.
So, Greg, there are people listening that love football, and they've been watching their whole lives and listening to this show for years. They don't know what a route stem is. They don't know what the top of the stem is. Can you explain?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you run a route, let's say against an off coverage corner, in other words, a corner that is not pressing you, he might be 6, 7, 8 yards off you. When you get to the point where you have to break, okay, if you're not running a straight vertical route, at some point you have to make a cut. You have to make a break. That is the top of the route stem, the point at which you're going to make your break. That is the point at which you need to separate from the corner. because if you can't separate from the corner at that point, if he's Velcro to you or if he's really tight to your body, there's no separation and there's no clear place for the quarterback to throw the football. So when you're making your break, that's the top of the route stem. That's where you have to be able to separate from a corner. Now, it's different in press man, obviously, because the corner is with you from the moment you release. He's either physically pressing you or it's what we call mirror match, where he's just running with you and mirroring you. But if it's an off corner, Ross, when you're ready to make your cut and your break, that's the top of the route stem.